Thank you. Sí, 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 sí. Sí, sí, sí. Hola, 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 hola. Hola, 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 buenas. Hola, hola. Hola, 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 hola. Buenas, buenas, buenos días. Hola, sí. Bueno, por favor, si van tomando asiento, vamos a comenzar en breve.
Please take your seats. We're going to begin in just a moment on our third day of our conference, the 3rd of December. So please, everyone, take your seats as quickly as you can. We are going to have some coffee available at the end of the room, behind the back wall. And so please feel free to help yourselves to a soft drink or a coffee. But please do try to go in small groups, not in big ones, because it would be a little disruptive for the event, if possible.
Buenos días, bienvenidos a esta tercera y última.
Good morning. Welcome to this third and last day of Worldcanic. We are here in Vega, Costa, in Tinaja, where you had the chance to make a guided visit through the farm by Toño Morales, the owner of this eco farm, which is a theme park for the primary sector of the island, where the local produce is growing just the way it is suitable for adults and for children, where everybody can get acquainted with the natural resources of the island. So we're going to get started with the first presentation of today from the volcanic region of Oregon, United States. Ryan Roadhouse, the chef of the restaurant Nodoguro in Portland, proposes a Japanese cuisine with local products that we discovered and was in certain characteristics similar to the Asian country. And starting from that concept, the Roadhouse is going to show how they overlapped both regions just to create something unique and really original. Welcome, Ryan.
So thank you for being here today, day 3 of this beautiful conference. Thanks for having us. We're very proud to be representing the Pacific Northwest volcanic region. We live in Portland, Oregon, and so we want to start off with a little video made by the people at Portland, Oregon to kind of show you what we do. Cue video. Okay, so this video is made in the style of my children's favorite animator, and that's Hayao Miyazaki. But as you can see, Portland is kind of represented as a very magical place, and our family definitely fell in love with it right away. Just took one trip to the farmer's market, probably the best cup of coffee we'd ever had in our lives up to that point, and then the largest forest that's inside a metro area. The other thing that Oregon, you see the natural beauty of St. Helen here, but it does geographically and in terms of vegetation have a lot in common with Japan. And that's another factor that we really love doing Japanese cuisine and having those Japanese ingredients that could grow really easily there, and even some we found were wild, like matsutakes and things like that. So that was another kind of selling point of how we could definitely get to know Oregon a lot. So when we went to start a restaurant, the cool thing about Portland is it has a really kind of indie spirit. The people there are really creative. They like unusual things. And they're big on sustainability, not into waste. So we decided to start a pop-up restaurant. Just my wife and I, we built a website that had like a kind of a makeshift reservation system. We would talk to other people we knew who had like restaurant space available, and we would borrow their restaurant for a couple days, post seats up on our website, and then just transform the place into kind of our little dinner club. And that's really how the restaurant started. It's gone through a few evolutions, but it was always about just kind of like those community connections. And it led us down the path of doing really rapid menu changes and things like that as well. Because we only knew a small number of people who were interested in coming and attending an event like this. So we wanted to make sure that the next time we did it was kind of something fresh. So we did really rapid menu changes using a lot of local ingredients and seasonality. So here you see more of the landscape here. These are some wild chanterelles, and those are kind of an iconic Northwest ingredient. But it's actually, the outdoors represents activities related with food as well. So a lot of people in the city, they can get out to the gorge, get out to the ocean. There's forest all around us. And you can hunt wild mushrooms. You can go to wineries, orchards. You can pretty much pick berries and other fruit year-round. So in terms of our style of the restaurant, we call it sosaku. So sosaku is based in more of like a kaiseki type tradition in terms of the nature of a lot of the dishes and the kind of traditional information with them. But sosaku leaves us a lot of room to kind of riff and do kind of fun things, and bring in a lot of local ingredients and kind of focus more on our kind of Northwest seasonality. That being said, when we started, I had a friend who was launching a farm, and he was really into starting a seed plan with us. So we made like this kind of dream wish list of everything we'd like to have on the ground. And then for that first year of operation, basically he would harvest what he had, and then we just kind of make the menu from there, and then fill in the gaps with like local seafood and things like that. So here's me and the kids at the farmer's market. Our farmer's market is huge, and there's so many craftspeople and makers there, and it goes year-round. Because of our climate, we do have a lot of year-round options. So like just in this photo, we have, these are Japanese organic turnips, hakuri or hakude style. And then over here we have ground cherries, tomatoes. So these would all kind of fall into what would be like our late summer, kind of early fall season. That's just like a little glimpse of that. So you can go down to the farmer's market, and that just kind of makes menus and options for you as well. So back to the chanterelles, huge wild harvest and multiple seasons for that. These huckleberries, they only grow above a certain altitude. Bears love to eat them, but the ash cap soil around Mount Hood is, a lot of people say, produces pretty much the best huckleberries in the world. So these are some of the dishes that we would do on kind of our courses. This is a beef tartare with a little bit of sturgeon caviar, sea urchin. Over there, that's our hasum plate that we do on one format. It's just like a bunch of different seasonal bites and textures from the land and the sea. So I talk about chef's journey because when people come into the restaurant, or even when I've made food for them before, the first question is, why are you doing Japanese? Like, why would you do Japanese cuisine? And I guess the answer is that I just love it, and it feels really natural. As a 16-year-old, I was teaching hockey school, and I had a group of Japanese students who, they flew over to Japan. They were so passionate about hockey, and I spent a lot of time with them, kind of guiding them. And they really exposed me to their culture, like for my first taste of like Japanese language and like the food that they brought with them. I thought they were wonderful people, and it really planted a seed for me. Next thing you know, I worked at a Japanese restaurant, became an apprentice, and I just got more and more into it. Eventually, I worked for a really great chef, Toshiki Zaki, in Denver, Colorado, and then from there, he really opened up my obsession, sent me to Japan for training. He had a Japanese fish company that was based in Fukuoka. I got to work with. But overall, I think he taught me like philosophical things about the way that a chef should interact with his guests and the idea of motenashi and things like that. And so those teachings about making choices, I think, continue to inspire me today. It's another shot of the scenery here. So the Northwest as we know it today, actually it's been really interesting being at this conference and learning more about things that we knew a little bit about, because our angle is more just like how does this affect the food and the terrain. But over 7,000 years there was a giant earthquake, Mount Mazama. It eventually collapsed and became our crater lake. So much later, Mount St. Helens, which we've talked about a lot over the last few days, it was only 1/100th of the ash that it produced, and but it continues to kind of create this ash cap soil, or around the area they call it toku soil, and it leads to ingredients that are really, I don't know, just delicious, and it's the fertile soil. It feels like we can plant almost anything. So we continue to take advantage of this, and it really leads to our year-round climate. So here's a shot of the crater lake. Over here, if you ever make it to the Northwest, definitely, it's a trek, but I definitely say get out there. This picture doesn't even really do it justice. And then here's Mount Hood. I'm sorry, Mount St. Helens. So as I was saying, people credit the volcanic soil with why we have such great ingredients. It's really amazing. If you spend a little time out there, we have year-round fruit. I think we have over 20 varietals of strawberries that local farms grow. We have huge blueberry production, and a lot of that is exported to Korea and Europe. Wild huckleberries, Italian plums, cherries, peaches, ground cherries, pears, persimmons. But basically the point is, like, if you're into like going out and getting your own food and working with farmers, there's basically something all 12 months. In terms of wild food, tons of mushrooms. And mushrooms are big. Like you go out to eat, like every season there's some kind of mushroom that's in season, and people are using that. So the chanterelles, like I said, were iconic, but also the morels. The morels are so sought after, and they only present themselves like after a forest burn. Porcinis, the Japanese matsutake, black trumpets are great in the winter, and then we have our truffles as well. The toku soil, they say, also affects the sea life. So we have gigantic Chinook salmon, wild sardines that, unfortunately, when I first moved there, I would see like just the mass freezing of these products. But we have these fresh sardines available that are a similar quality to what you would find in Japan. Stablefish, oysters of all varieties, and the Oregon Dungeness crab. The best part of it too is that we have such a culture there of farmers who are willing to kind of work and take extra steps, make seed plans with you, and just try to do things that are like interesting and fun within their craft. And it really makes the whole place a lot better. More outdoors here, covered in flowers of every kind. Also, if you go the hikes around the area are just breathtaking, and hit certain seasons, you can get up of a certain elevation that's just covered and wildflowers as far as the eye can see. And then over here we have our orchards, cherry orchards. We have tons of varieties of cherries in the Pacific Northwest. A lot of those are for export as well, and some of them are just like they basically like self-manage some of these fields, so you get a really kind of natural product. These are some more dishes that you would see on some of our tasting menus here. So we have, this is the house-made sesame tofu with ikra, a little sashimi, and then our take on like a Caesar salad there. But cooking in Oregon, it's a great experience because it turns into a huge collaborative process with a lot of these producers and also the people who dine there, and it really allows us to do kind of our own version of like a here and now cooking that is kind of inspired by all these other elements, but we still try to keep it true to Japanese craft and the seasonality of food. Okay, so we're going to get into the dish demonstration. All right. So the first thing we're going to do today is this is our Oregon black cod. So this one has been cured in sake lees. So we do a mixture of sake lees, which is like the leftover parts of the sake making process, and we actually have local sake makers in Oregon as well. The sake lees doesn't have a whole lot of seasoning itself, so it requires usually to cut it with some kind of a miso in this case, and that'll add more umami and a little bit of seasoning and depth of flavor. And from there we cut it with a little bit of sake and sugar and basically age it overnight. So that's the kind of classic sake, the sakezuke kind of dish. And then we kind of add a little bit of a process to it where people in Oregon love these hearty flavors. They love their bacon. They love their things like that. So we had the idea, like, what if we take the sake kasu and then try to add a few more elements to it? So for our version, we took the sake kasu and then we finished that process. And then also to add a little bit more depth of flavor, because from there we've decided to go into smoke. So we take a step back before the sake kasu and we do like a salt dredge to get kind of like a nice penetration of the seasoning. From there we do a shionuki and like pull out some of that excess salt, but just try to create like a balanced flavor. And then it's dried off in the soak. And then from there we pull out, it's got another air dry, and then we smoke. Right now we're smoking with apple chips. During the spring we'll use cherry, and we kind of like, we try to keep that rather seasonal as well. So this is kind of one piece. We have a few different pieces here that could all go together to make like one of our santen mori courses. It's like 3 different kind of seasonal bites that can sort of work together and have different textures and elements. So this is one piece of that, and we're going to fire this off in a second. The other is what's called kimpira gobo, or burdock. So gobo is used a lot in Japanese cuisine. It's really a medicinal food. You see it in a lot of places. There's also supplements that will kind of treat high blood pressure and things like that made from the burdock. But this is one of those dishes that I think will kind of find its way into almost everything. It's a dish that, it's a really old dish. It comes from the name of one of the 4 kings who was known for his like super strength. So once again, back to the medicinal qualities of the gobo, it's one that's meant to inspire strength. And then gobo itself, in terms of the New Year calendar, also lends itself towards longevity. It's a symbolic food. So you can make this in many different ways, and you can scale it up and down. It's home cooking. It's like drinking food. You can find it even on kaiseki menus. It just really depends on your approach. For the one that we made here in Spain, a lot of times we use a really heavy sesame oil. I actually avoid that, but that's more the classic. For the version that we presented here, we actually made with olive oil and just used real sesame for any of the actual sesame flavor. Also, the way you do it can be done in many different ways too. So a lot of times people will saute it heavily in like a hard sesame oil, and then add a kind of pre-composed broth, and then bring that down. And then you end up with kind of a more of a syrupy kind of kimpira. So I find that if you want to make more of a nuanced version, the best way is to actually build your sauce in the pan, because the process of cooking the kimpira in Japanese would be described as like a saute simmer. So with this one, we've already actually done it. We brought in the kimpira. You have to slice it by hand, and you can go decide what sort of shape you're looking for. And then from there, you start off with your oil, and then cook it with sake until that evaporates, building in your base layers from there. But you're looking at basically sugar, soy sauce, and if you choose, a little glaze of mirin. So for this one, because we're going to team it up with that black cod, we've already got that all done, and so we're just going to kind of like bring it back to life a little bit. So we just put this a little bit more olive oil in here, and it can kind of bring that kind of flavor and essence back. You can, however, totally eat kimpira cold. It'll kind of re-release any of the aromas that you have there. So we're just going to fire our black cod. After the smoking process, we usually give it another air dry, just so that it picks up better flavor and gets a little bit better texture on the skin. So plateware is really important to what we do. We work with a lot of local potters, and we've actually commissioned a lot of pieces that are designed kind of based on specific things that we're looking for a dish. However, we also love collecting Japanese pottery as well. We're into antique pottery, and we try to collect different pieces of like all the different schools. And usually we do that in Japan at flea markets and things like that. Like the level of pottery that's around and within that culture is amazing. So we can go ahead and lay in our kimpira here. So nice, you have to bring it up, it's got like a nice shine to it, things like that. So as I was saying with the santen mori, you know, you have 3 different elements, but at the same time, I think that you can also pair them. It can be a nice complement of texture and adding like another piece. So the black cod for this dish has already been smoked and then cured in the sake lees. And then now we're just going to finish it. So it's just 2 takes on, you know, classic dishes that we think work together, and I think this is a good like izakaya type dish. For our next piece, we're going to kind of introduce another traditional one. This one's called shirai. So this basically means white dressed, or, you know, basically it's dressed with tofu. You can put almost any combination of ingredients that work for you into this, and then you compose it into a salad. Do we have, oh, it's okay. So for today's version, when we get into the season, the persimmons come into season in Oregon, and we love our local persimmons, but I usually use the fuyus. And so when coming out here, I didn't think I'd be allowed to bring our persimmons with us, so I asked Aidan to source some for us. And I believe that these are Spanish persimmons. And when I saw the shape, I got really nervous, because this usually means hachiya, which is a astringent persimmon. So you have to do some sort of treatment to break down that astringency and make it edible in a pleasant way. So I saw this case and I got really nervous, but then the really odd thing is that these Spanish persimmons have almost no astringency and they're absolutely delicious. So it was a pleasure to work with these and discover a new ingredient. So we can just use the persimmon fresh, but instead I think we'll marinate it with a little bit of this dashi. This is actually a sambaizu, so dashi is the base. You see the nice golden liquid here, but it's cut with usukuchi soy sauce, which is a type of soy sauce that's used more in Western Japan, more like Kansai region. But I love it because it gives a nice golden color instead of that dark hue you get sometimes with the koikuchi soy sauce. And it's a nice one to use with dashis. The base ingredient for this one, tofu. We were talking about miso before. The range of misos is so wide, and we generally use, I don't know, 5 or 6 misos at any given time. For this particular dish, you crush the tofu. The home cooking version is almost like a potato salad or something like that. You take your ingredients, you crush your tofu, add a little bit of miso, usukuchi soy sauce, sugar, and then you take your ingredients and just kind of coat it up like mixing up mashed potatoes. For our version, we've added a saikyo miso, so this is a Kyoto-style miso with a really low salt content, around 4%, and we got a very smooth texture, more like a sauce out of it. And this one has a little bit of sesame, those same sort of composition of ingredients, but the saikyo miso is more floral and has a sort of a built-in natural sweetness due to the balance of the koji when you make this miso, so it produces a sweeter product. So to kind of change up the traditional model in the dish, we made a really smooth sauce, and then we actually allowed it to sour just a touch, just to add a bit more complexity to the dish. So you have your persimmons. These are shiitake mushrooms. We pickled these in dashi, and the way we do that so that they kind of retain a texture and some more of their meatiness is we just kind of saute them lightly in a little bit of oil and only give it just as much as it needs to start to kind of give it some body and make them nice to eat. So with those ones, then we rest, and then we drop them as well in the sambaizu vinegar, which means 3 spoons vinegar. So the key ingredients on this one, dashi, usukuchi soy sauce, vinegar, sugar. So then for this salad, we're just going to put these elements back together. Now the persimmon's got a little marinade, and although the natural flavor is wonderful, I think that having a little base acidity hidden below the creamy shirai is actually a nice touch that I like. And we're just going to finish off with this tofu cream. And just give it a little garnish here. All right, there you have it. So that's all we have for the demo. I did want to say thank you so much for the organizers of this event. This was a really incredible experience to be a part of. I was super impressed. And then coming to the island of Lanzarote, I've never seen anything like it. This place is absolutely beautiful. And thank you for your hospitality.
Thank you very much.
It's all yours, isn't it? Or should I continue?
Good job.
Oh, thank you very much.
Bueno, pues.
Okay, well, let's continue. with our next presentation. We just have to move some things around on the stage now and get the chairs ready for the round table, which will be our next part of the program.
Ah, no, esto no lo puedo mover. La siguiente ponencia.
So, the next presentation is going to focus on La Palma Island. We're all following the events going on there right now because of the volcano, and really our thoughts are with all of the islanders in this difficult time. Well, it seems we're missing a few of our speakers. Don't know if anyone's seen them.
Vendrán.
I'm sure they'll arrive.
La verdad es que da gusto ver cómo cocina.
It's amazing seeing how easy they make it look and what little mess they make and how quickly they seem to be able to dish up all of these amazing meals.
¿Eh? Bien, muy bien. Sí, no, tenemos al resto de los ponentes ya.
Okay, I think the rest of the speakers are arriving.
Bueno, pues si técnicamente está todo ok.
Okay, if everything's ready on the tech side, let's kick off. So as I was saying, La Palma has us all quite worried, really. We're following very closely what's happening there. In fact, our thoughts have been with them throughout the whole event. Today, we're joined by 3 people from La Palma who are really directly linked to their territory. We're joined by Fernando. He is the manager of the sea salt harvesting factory, and also Jose Alberto Diaz, chef at the El Sitio restaurant, and the very well-known volcanologist Mike Sanchez Carrasco, who will be talking to us about all of his fields of study: volcanology, hospitality, and also salt harvesting. He's going to talk to us about the future of tourism related to these activities. So without further ado, I'm going to join them now, and we're going to have a conversation about everybody. So first of all, thank you for joining us today and for sharing your knowledge with us during this conference. Let's kick off with Mike. What's happening right now with the volcano and the different openings, the different vents? Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. This is an amazing event, so thank you to Fournier in particular for making it possible for me to be here today. And I thank you also to all of the speakers, Jean-Martin, Lorenz, Gino, Frederick. Thank you so much, because I've learned a great deal, even more about volcanoes. I have a website, and apart from talking about gastronomy, I always try to have this kind of outreach, this educational element about seismic activity in Spain and on the islands. I think we all have a lot to learn, really, on these issues, because if we don't educate the population, then we'll have a big gap in knowledge. What's happening in La Palma could happen in Tenerife one day. We live on volcanic islands, much like Hawaii, Iceland, Sicily. And I think we must learn about our territory. We must know what to do if these things happen. And we often wait until the last moment to learn about these things. So it seems now, anyway, that in La Palma the volcano is calming down a little, and we hope that this trend will continue, and that the people that have suffered as a result of this volcano will start to recover their lives. So you mentioned education. I remember seeing one volcanologist talking about their training and the things that they need to study to be able to actually become real experts in this issue. And he said that this is something that isn't actually studied as a specific field. There aren't any degrees with the title volcanology. So it seems that people come from lots of different other fields, geology, for example. And from those fields, they become interested one day in volcanoes, and then they embark on their own personal journey. Yes, it's true that, well, in Palma, in La Palma, for instance, in 1951, there was another eruption. They don't happen that often, but when these things happen, then it's, it sparks interest in people. And I have to say, I think, yes, tourism is a big part of our economy here, but we mustn't forget that we're volcanic islands. Hawaii have a completely different take on this. In schools, they study volcanoes. People know what to do if an earthquake happens, and I think we have a lot to learn. Lucy Jones is a real reference point, Dr. Lucy Jones from the Seoul Seismic Institute, and Thomas Jordan. They carry out a simulation every year called the Big Shake. It takes place simultaneously in many different places around the world in the month of October, in locations where a big earthquake may happen. This is in California. And so I think we need to follow this model from California. We learn with each catastrophe, of course, but we need to focus more on prevention. The title of this talk, To Prevent is to Live, is to survive. We're going to talk to Andres now, the manager of the sea salt farm at Fuencaliente. So your business is located in a very beautiful part of the island, and it's actually the location of the most recent volcanic activity on the island. So I'd like to know how you're affected, how you're being affected, how your business is being affected at the moment because of this volcanic eruption in La Palma. Well, first of all, thank you again for the invitation to take part in this event. I've learned a lot. Well, our business, of course, has suffered because a lot of ash fell on our land in the first week following the eruption. We lost 30% of this year's production, actually. And it's not the first time that we've been affected by a volcano. In 1971, my grandfather felt the effects of the eruption, and actually the whole salt farm was destroyed. Not by the lava, but by the ash. The lava actually stopped just a couple of 100 meters from the borders of our land. So my father, I wasn't around, I didn't experience that volcanic eruption, but my father told me that if there ever were another eruption, then I should be very careful about the ashes. And effectively, that was what caused the most damage. We are facing quite a complex reconstruction process ahead of us now. We've been in existence for 54 years now, and it's a family business. It's passed on generation to generation, and once again, we're going to have to begin to rebuild our infrastructure and hopefully save the rest of the harvest this year. Of course, the uncertainty brought about by the pandemic is still very present. During the pandemic, we talked about reinventing ourselves, but now it's more a question of, rebuilding. And I suppose in the short term, I feel quite pessimistic. The salt farm was quite a well-visited area. We had a restaurant. We have a restaurant as well, a shop, and of course we're feeling a huge impact now. Our turnover is only 10% compared to what it was before these complicated times. We also are having challenges supplying our external markets. We don't only sell to local buyers, but we try to keep in mind that in the medium term, this will bring with it positive benefits, so we just need to hold on until that moment arrives. You said that in the year 1971, the lava almost hit your salt farm. I'm sure you were very young at the time, but do you have any memories of perhaps what your parents have told you about what happened during that eruption? Well, I was born in 77. My father was actually doing military service at that time, so it was my grandfather that's told me about what actually happened. And basically they were convinced that the salt farm was going to be taken by the lava. And when they woke up in the morning, they saw that it had narrowly escaped. Actually, there are records from La Palma of that year that relate this story. And what happened in the past, of course, could happen again. Of course, our salt farm is located in quite a unique place. It's at the foothills of the Teneguía volcano. We have 2 water wells that use geothermal energy from the volcano from 2007 onwards. We're very aware that we're, right next door to this very active volcanic area. And I think that actually from this event onwards, there's going to be more simulations to train the local population so that they know what to do in case of a earthquake. I think this education is key so that people don't believe this fake news, so that they're fully aware of what's happening, and so that they're not taken by surprise as they were now. People really don't need to be afraid of volcanoes. We need to respect them, and we need to know how to live alongside them. We live right next to these volcanoes, and we must learn more about them. Jose Alberto Diaz from El Sitio Restaurant. Good morning. So, of course, gastronomy has felt the impact of the volcano. Everyone's felt the effects of these events in their own field, and so perhaps you could talk to us about how you felt it, the effects. In this, hospitality, tell us what changes you've noticed. Well, as Andres said, we went from having full restaurants, hotels with 100% occupancy, to around 30, maybe 40% occupation, and the same in the restaurant. We depend a great deal on local customers, and because of their personal circumstances, of course, they haven't been going out to eat so much, and tourists, of course, haven't been coming, so we've really suffered, actually. It seems like you've had to just press the pause button. We're just waiting for the volcano to stop erupting, and we know that after we will have an influx of tourism, and it will generate a lot of work. But what we need is a set of, regulations, a set of guidelines to prepare the island for this boom that will come. Being here in Lanzarote, I've realized, as Andres was saying, that we have a lot to improve. Our island, it's called the beautiful island. But we really need to develop it in a different way, and we need to improve our coexistence with this volcanic landscape. We weren't ready. We weren't prepared. The last eruption, I guess, was 50 years ago. I'm not even 50 years old, so it's quite natural that I wouldn't be, prepared for an eruption like this. I suppose in hindsight, it was obvious that we were going to have another eruption, but despite this, we were taken by surprise. So, as I say, islanders need to be better prepared, and we need to, harness more the resources that we have. If tourism is going well, then education should match this. They should go hand in hand. We need to coexist with these volcanoes. And if we do manage to improve this coexistence, then tourists will feel safer, I think, as well, better welcomed, because they will be better informed. I think this will be a real boost for our tourism industry, because visitors will feel that the locals know what they're talking about. And I think this is a good opportunity for us here. We have to look at everything, in combination, not in isolation. Of course, I'm deeply sorry for what's happened in La Palma. I personally have suffered. I've seen with my own eyes people who've lost everything, who had invested a great deal of money in building their lives there. And so I truly hope that we, once and for all, learn a lesson. Jose Alberto, tell us now about the rest of the island. Of course, the area that's directly affected by the volcano in the west of the island is, as I said before, it's like they've pressed the pause button. But how is the capital doing, the north, the east? Well, right now, the volcano is affecting 10% of the surface area of the island, so 90% is unaffected. In the Aridane Valley, well, apart from the Aridane Valley, there are areas of the island that are living normally. Of course, there is ash, there is some noise, but it's very safe to visit the island. And there, as I said, there are parts where you wouldn't even know that there was a volcano erupting. The problem is that 10% that has affected the Aridane Valley is the area with the highest population, with the biggest economic activity. It's really the heart of the island, and that's why we've seen that the consequences of this volcanic eruption are greater than the eruption in the 1970s in Teneguía, because in this area there were barely any people living there. This eruption in the 70s was really something amazing to go and see. Many people went. It didn't really cause any damage, let's say. But this time round, it's not just something amazing to go and see. It's something that's having a disastrous effect on people's lives. And people don't look at it as this amazing miracle of nature, this spectacle. They look at it as something destructive and sad. Yes, it's very close to my house, actually. The first couple of days, I sat in my chair just staring at it, completely shocked, because, it really is a spectacle. But now I don't even want to see it anymore. I try not to look at it at all. So, has tourism been affected in these areas of the island that haven't been affected by the volcano? No, I'd say that actually they're doing even better than ever, in fact, because, as I said, even the people that live in the Aridane Valley, where the volcano is, when we have a day off, we go to the other parts of the island and we see that the restaurants are all full and things are booming. Mike, then, let's talk now about these famous ashes. This has come with the rain now. They've arrived at the same time. So do we need to collect this to dispose of it in a specific way? Can you use it for anything? Can you recycle it? Is this, it seems like a complex issue. Yes, right now we're in this emergency phase. And in the plan, the emergency plan, we should have had a place designated to deposit this volcanic ash, to store it there. We know that this lapilli is full of minerals, so it's very useful for later agricultural use. But really, people don't know what they should be doing with it right now. Some people are throwing it into the drains, you know, throwing it away there. But when it rains, it creates kind of a mass, and it blocks up all the drain system. Has there been a big effect on crops, on harvests? As Jose Alberto said, you're located in, you know, the most important banana plantation area of the island. It's probably the most important, in fact. Yes, the banana plantations have been hugely affected. We're actually trying to promote a campaign now to convince people that even if a banana doesn't look perfect on the outside, it doesn't mean that it's not perfect on the inside. And we have received some financial assistance in the Aridane Valley. We've been hugely affected with the problems with water supply caused by the volcano. I think the local authorities have actually acted quite quickly, and they've come to our aid, but a great deal of land, of productive land, has been lost. The ash continues to fall, and it continues to cause a great deal of damage. Do you think that Canary Island bananas still have a future ahead of them after this volcano? Well, I'm not too familiar with that sector, but I think so. We're still exporting the bananas. They're still on the shelves in the supermarkets. And I think it's actually perhaps helped to promote the bananas indirectly, all of this. Exports in recent months have actually risen. Citizens have really increase their support for our local products. The national lottery tickets that we sell at Christmas time the sales of these tickets in La Palma have shot up enormously. In the news, when it came out that 30% of production was lost of bananas, something similar happened in supermarkets during the pandemic when everyone started to buy toilet paper. Well, they did the same thing with our bananas. People really jumped into action to try and harvest all of the bananas that they could to be able to store them for later export. But there really has, as I say, been huge local support, and this has increased, you know, the awareness of our local products even more. So let's talk about salt now. How has your salt been affected by the ash? And the salt that has been affected by the ash, can you wash it? Can you process it to be able to use it? Well, I was saying maybe we can just sell black salt. Actually, we heard a lot about, you know, salt from Hawaii and Iceland, you know, with this ash inside it, yeah? Well, I'm not sure. Perhaps it's an idea worth considering, but I think that these volcanic eruptions force us to reinvent ourselves and try and, you know, continue however we can. Who knows what might happen with our local products in the future? Perhaps it will open up a whole host of other opportunities. I think everything that for everything that a volcano takes away from us, it also gives us a great deal back. Well, we've heard a lot about how important prevention is, and I think you're quite right, you know, given the fact that we live on volcanic islands. Jose Alberto, have you noticed a problem with supplies on the island? Planes often aren't able to land, boats aren't able to dock. Yes, I mean, living in an island, supplies are quite challenging. Anyway, we're not one of the main islands in the Canaries with the capital cities, so all products that are sent to the island always take that little bit longer. And of course, the airport has been closed now for 8 days, I think. So, of course, inevitably, this has had an effect on our supplies. And it seems that La Palma has always been quite self-sufficient with its own products. Yes, but we don't have enough, you know, of course, our raw materials, our core ingredients are of high quality, and it's a pleasure to be able to, you know, consume our own locally grown products, but it's not enough quantity. We need to import. Andres, for instance, was saying to me earlier that in order to guarantee supply of his, you know, regular producers of vegetables, he's had to find other options. But the particular type of variety of products that you usually order often aren't available with particular producers, so you have to, you know, widen your search. And this is all to do with what we said at the very beginning. I just think we're not ready. You know, we're not prepared to survive in these circumstances. I went to see an estate once, and I was quite envious, actually, of everything that they had. This estate, in fact, is really quite enviable, with a variety of crops that are on offer. Avocados are being planted more, and this is profitable, but I think we need to continue to diversify the crops that we grow. Well, just one more thing then, before we finish. What I'd like is for you to share your personal thoughts, your personal reflections on what you're going through right now in La Palma, and how you see the future panning out. Well, honestly, for me, I think, of course, an eruption won't last forever. It will stop at some point, and we will begin to continue rebuilding our lives. I would like to send my love from the bottom of my heart to the people of La Palma and remind them that after every catastrophe, we must go through this process of rebuilding. But for now, I give you my full support, and please, you know, be safe in the knowledge that we will rebuild step by step. And as I always say on my website, prevention is, you know, the key to coexisting with these volcanoes. We must be aware of our past to prepare for the future. Andres, well, I would say, of course, the main thing is that volcanoes don't last forever, as we said. And so I think now is actually the time to start to envisage this next step. And remember that the volcano will bring with it positive effects. We need to just get through this last moments and prepare for the change. I think we're going to have new, very necessary infrastructure that will bring with it great change on the island. I hope that people will stop leaving the island. I know many people are abandoning it because they are so, pessimistic about the future, and I hope that comes to an end. I hope people stay on the island, and I would like to invite all of you to come and visit us whenever you want to see how it's possible to coexist with a volcano, even when it is erupting. We hope to see you all there one day. Jose Alberto, then, let's end with you. Well, my final comments, my personal comments, would be that, well, I think no one on La Palma was expecting this, even though we possibly should have been. I think it's changed our lives completely because, as I say, nobody really could have even imagined what this experience would be like. You have to see it to believe it. And I feel really quite grateful for the solidarity that the people have demonstrated. We felt this support from the rest of the world, and now I think we need to try and be positive about the future, to try and create a new vision. And as Andrea said, we need people to come and see us and visit and help us now more than ever, because we're really going to need your support. Well, that's the final comments for today, and in this round table, it's clear that our thoughts, the thoughts of all of us, are with La Palma, not just in the Canary Islands, but the entire world. And so let's keep our fingers crossed that it won't last much longer and La Palma can get back to normal. Thank you very much. A big round of applause for our speakers and for La Palma Island. Okay, let's carry on now.
Get outside.
El mundo del queso.
Okay, let's continue. We're gonna change the subject, and now we're gonna talk about the cheese, which will be the main character of the following moments. We have Carlos Maribona, who has developed his whole career in the newspapers ABC, Spanish ABC. He was the vice director. Today, he also works in XL in Vocento. He's a professor at the University San Pablo CEU, and National Gastronomy Award, among many other awards. Carlos Mariona. The floor is all yours. Okay. Let's talk for a while about one of the products that was somehow forgotten, but people don't link it with volcanic lands, which are cheese. And yesterday, some of the speeches that we had the pleasure to listen to, if you might remember, Llorenç, for instance, spoke about La Garrocha and the soils of La Garrocha and told us how the sheep and the veal in that area try to find, the pastures in the volcanic ashes. That means that the pasture and the grazing over there, if they like it much more, that means that the final product will be much better. In order to talk about this topic today, we have with us 3 guests. One of them, unfortunately, cannot participate live, but with all these COVID difficulties, we are going to have him with us by streaming from Girona, and the 2 others that are here on site with us. I will introduce them to you, and then I will talk in general about the production areas. We have Monsieur Lovert, who comes from the denomination of origin Cantal, Yves Lobert. We have Arminda Garcia from Lanzarote, a great cheese production area, which is UGA, and Salvador Garcia Arbos, who is over there. I see him through the streaming, a journalist, a close friend of mine, and especially the volcanic area we are going to talk about. These 3 production areas, for instance, La Garrocha is an area where they produce a specific cheese that has been recovered in the last years, namely, which is talking a soft cheese with a, I really invite you to try, has kind of a moldy crust. In the Auvergne is a malt rind. Auvergne, we have cheese varieties with protected origin. Some of them are very well known. The segment there, we have the Bleu de Verde as well. And one of those 5 designations of origin is the Cantal, which is the one that Monsieur Lovett represents. The Cantal is the most ancient or antique cheeses from the area, and one of the oldest ones produced in France. It has a designation of origin since the year 1956, and they produce 3 different cheese types, a fresh one, average one, and then another one which is a little bit riper. And just like the one from La Garrocha that I mentioned before, is really, really tasty and good. And just remaining here on Lanzarote, and not for that reason is the less important one or the less good one, the UGA estate. What they do is that they produce many, many cheeses because they are devoted to agricultural and farming and livestock. They have 20 different cheese varieties, and some of them, as far as I know, and during the last World Cheese Award that I had the honor to be a member of the jury. Some people like Benjamin Lana was also a member of the jury. And during that World Cheese Award was carried out in Oviedo, the last month is one of the big referrals on the world cheese. With the Lanzarote cheese had a big representation. They were really successful, and some of them coming from the UGA estate that were awarded a few medals. So as they mentioned yesterday during the speech on local products, the cheese from Lanzarote is not that renowned, probably because milk was sent to other islands where they produce the milk, the cheeses with that milk. And having said that, we are going to, if you agree with me, let's get into the matter. And while I take a seat, I would like to ask a general question, please, Arminda, if you don't mind. How could you define the cheese that you produce? Namely, how would you define the cheeses in Lanzarote, and specifically the one that you produce with that? It's quite a complicated question, because as you said, we have about 20 different varieties. Just to get introduced, we have goats, the Majorera variety. We have the Canary goats, and then we have the Jersey cows. And the estate has been exists since about 16 years. I've been participating in the production for about 10 years. And we have traditional varieties based on goat and sheep milk, and then some innovation. So we try to keep the tradition, handicrafts as well, with new technologies, introducing and adapting the production from, applying techniques from France, Italy, bringing them over here to Lanzarote, trying to create new, specific and differentiated products. Monsieur Lovert, welcome. Is it possible for you to define the cheese that you produce? It is a great pleasure to talk about gastronomy and with you. I'm very happy to be part of this round. We have the designation of origin, which is absolutely important, which is divided according to the territories. And we are very sorry because we don't get the sound. We're having the sound problems with the sound system, and we already asked the technicians to sort it out. We're very sorry about that. We don't get it. It's impossible. No. We are sorry we don't get the sound. Yes. We are very sorry. They're trying to sort out the sound problem because the booth doesn't get the sound. No. No. No, no sound. No. Now. Okay. And back to the point, the cheese is produced in different territories. We have been food analyzers, and we have realized that we have many different characteristics, trace elements that we could find in a territory. So we decided for quite a long time to try to defend this designation of origin, to bring it kind of further, and developing other characteristics, namely, it has about, we're talking about cheese, which has it's 45 centimeters high and 45 centimeters width. We want to relate this with the volcanic soils and their characteristics. Yes. This is about the 9th day, and now I'm feeling a little bit better, but I have a terrible cold. I would have loved to greet you all personally, and I'm really happy that you have thought about the garrocha and what we produce here. Thank you, Vocento. Thank you, GCR, and we'll meet some other day. And regarding the cheese from the garrocha region, we would have to talk of cheeses in general, but garrocha is something relatively new, and I would say that cheese, was born in the 80s because before we were producing a cheese, it was kind of a fresh cheese, like the one from Burgos, and we could have produced goat cheese, and also with other sort of milk products, and which is producing with the ramic, with a conic fish shape. And then we started to recover that traditional cheese, but it's kind of surprisingly, but all of a sudden the cheese disappeared in the garrocha. It was produced in many, many other places. So now there are, some new cheese industries are popping up in the garrocha. I had to bring 3 cheeses to, send 3 cheeses over here. I have a 2 kilo piece that I wanted to send. And we're talking about, you know, we're talking about dairy industries that they produce some other type of cheeses with a softer paste. It might be pressed, you know, pressed ones which are linked to the Cantal, and they're producing with them with cow milk, and most of the pasture surround the volcanic area of La Garrocha. That's the main characteristics. But historically, we're talking about there were used to be fresh cheese, right? And every Tuesday, people from the mountains came down to bring their products. Now those places are not inhabited, right? But there were many people that came, as I said, on Tuesday at my market, you know, and they knocked on the door and they say, "I'm selling cheese. How do you want it, salted or unsalted?" And people preferred it without, you know, unsalted, so that you could combine it with honey, a little bit sugar. But the ones that really succeeded and really gave us success at La Garrocha, so, you know, we're talking about a soft cheese that has kind of this ivory color, and that's the way it really worked. So, I mean, I'm talking about 30, 40 different types of cheese that we can find here. But in overall, what I really wanted to mention here, and what we told, and what the volcanologists really told, is that the pasture is really nice. You know, and not only La Garrocha, but the grazing in the, you know, in the Puy region are also the beans, all the beans that we can produce, right? You know, but that's something, you know, in the Puy you see all those green roofs, which are characteristics. But I really want to introduce that, you know, just highlight and point out, you know, the beans, the green roofs, and then the thermal water and the, you know, the spring waters that we have, natural carbonated waters that we have in the region. So what I'm saying, we're talking about 3 different type of cheeses. 2 of them are quite recent. If I really understood you, the Garrocha cheeses are quite recent. The cheeses from Lanzarote, mainly recent, but the one historical, the one that has a real tradition is the Cantal cheese, which exists for about over 1,000 years, if I'm not wrong. Is that right? We have found some writings that mention them from long time ago. We have a work dynamic, you know, trying to develop this designation of origin that has been internationally renowned. We're talking about in 1942, we finally and officially applied to become the designation of origin. And during the Second World War, the soldiers requested to eat that cheese, and this is kind of a good starting point in order to apply for the designation of origin. And it really encouraged that we applied for the designation of origin in 1956. France acknowledges this cheese as a, you know, and really awarded it with the designation of origin. Also, the European Union, and parallel in France, we have over 50 different cheeses with designation of origin. We have an association, Le Régiment, that really protects those principles, the way things that are well done, you know, all those antique techniques that we want to preserve. And why do we consider that in the lobby of industrial countries that want to copy all traditional techniques and want to stop our progress? Well, we consider that it is absolutely crucial to stop that advance, to promote our techniques. And most of the people think that things were better before. It's not exactly like that, but we keep on protecting the techniques, you know, those old techniques, and we want to transfer them to the future generations with the same philosophy. And just to give you an example, today we do not press cheese with the hands or with our feet, but we use machines. this is nothing negative or defect. It's different. We're just applying the same technique, but in another manner. We need to adapt to the new times, but keeping the philosophy, the technique, the way we do and we create things. Which are the characteristics that we could highlight regarding a cheese that is produced in volcanic region? Do you notice it? Is the milk better? Isn't it better? Well, I think that Eve might have a deeper knowledge because he was talking about a cheese that is has a quite a considerable background, but the people, the people that, depending on the grazing land and through the agriculture, the plants absorb part of the nutrients that the soil content, in this case, volcanic soils, and that grazing might contribute to the milk to have some characteristics that might be transferred to the quality, the cheese quality. So as my colleague Yves mentioned before, we had to adapt and modernize the techniques that we applied in the production system. We tried to adapt and apply those improvements when producing cheese, trying to keep the tradition, but also applying machinery that really enable and make the production much easier, keeping the quality of cheese. So I think they're on the right path. Salvador, according to you, is there some influence of the territory on the final product, in this case the volcanic soils, to the Garrocha cheeses? Yeah, I think so, but because the milk is produced and comes from animals that have been grazing in volcanic soils. And I think that the vegetation and the grass that grows over there, the grazing that grows over there, is different from the ones that grow in other regions. In the previous speech, they were just mentioning that the soils are richer in terms of nutrients. So for that same reason, the volcanic soils where the grazing grows is better and is also better for the livestock. And that's something that was also mentioned yesterday, just for that fact. And in your case, what do you think about, is it a principal element? Well, I think that the first fact is that our volcano is very old. However, nature has has played its part, but we still have the same mentality. The volcano is giving us all the nutrients, but at the same time, it stopped us, from having the rainfall that we used to have. And over the time, we have discovered other sources, not only for the livestock that graze on the area, but also we kind of forced that livestock to graze in that land as far as the conditions allow is, right? In our case, we just left the area in about 2 days. The temperature was about 20 degrees. It never freezes over there, so livestock can graze freely as much as they can. We do not give a preference to one specific race to another. What is important for us is that all what that cow might eat will be transferred to the cheese quality. That is what we consider important. And once we're finished with that, is when we understand why the cycle, into that cycle, the volcano plays quite an important part, If we compare our cheese with the Pyrenees, our cheese, well, I invite you all, in the case of, I invite you to watch a small video that we have brought, and you can see when you leave the room, and there you can see mountains that are almost buried together with a volcano. It's an area where there are no trees. We use the same technique that we use with Parmesan cheese We're talking about a cheese that is produced in the mountains, which is completely linked to the designation of the territory itself. We cannot heat up the milk the same way. We cannot surpass, the 30 degrees. So we apply a rather natural product, and that everything is related to the volcano. But would like to add, just to finish my explanation, is that our cheese has a very high calcium content. We need to consider all these elements, and is what defines nature. So we need to see how it contributes to our product. We don't know exactly what the limit is. We don't know if they eat more or less cheese. Today we care a lot about our health. At least in France, those elements are so important to bear in mind. There are, many clubs pop up, and people, they keep a close eye on these things, namely if they take this or that. And in France, for instance, cheese has to be produced with a little bit of salt, and we really consider whether it's healthy or not. The only one is the Cantal, that has its own protected designation of origin. Do you think, Arminda and Salvador, that you will get a designation of origin for the cheeses that you're representing or producing, or you're not that interested in getting that acknowledgement? Oh, well, we currently do not have a designation of origin in Lanzarote. But, well, we're talking about 14 dairies here on the island, and we're rather working to see author cheeses, We don't have to follow a strict production line and the characteristics of each of the cheeses. When you have a designation of origin, you kind of have to follow some steps, right? In Fuerteventura, we have the designation of origin Majorero, and people have questioned why we don't get together and try to try to have the same name under the same umbrella of Majorero under that designation of origin. But despite us having produced the cheeses for quite a short time, I mean, compared to other dairies where they produce for about 30 years, most of them are quite recent, we didn't want to get involved into all the red tape of designation of origin. We consider that each of the cheeses has its own characteristics, which makes them so interesting. And we think that when people come over, have the possibility to taste different cheese varieties with higher or less production. Some have grazing, others have extensive production too, and that diversity is what makes our cheeses so interesting, so that people really identify cheeses in Lanzarote without following specific rules. Well, I think that's important, the main important is just to make a specific brand. Sometimes the designation of origin kind of limits you because you have to follow some guidelines. What do you think, Salvador? Oh, well, I couldn't add nothing else than what Arminda just said, And first, we're producing author cheeses, the way they want. The know-how is almost universal, and you don't have to follow a specific guideline like the Cantal, right? I mean, if today they would start to produce Cantal from zero, maybe they would have exactly the same experience like in Lanzarote, Girona, or in mainland Spain. For instance, the historic areas have one cheese, and the emerging regions have many cheeses, because each dairy produces what they want to produce, from, combining different kind of milks like cow, sheep, goat, buffalo, pure or combined. But now you cannot limit their creativity because they are free to produce whatever they want to, and people and the dairy makers produce what they really can do the best. There's another thing to consider. In what Cantal refers, they have enough production, they're really well known worldwide, so that people want to try Cantal cheese. You would have to produce an extraordinary cheese so that everybody could produce that extraordinary cheese. The historic Garracha cheese is a very, very good one. It cannot be compared with the great cheese, renowned cheese, if you do not invest many, many hours, a lot of research, a lot of know-how, and I don't think that people are ready or willing to do that. That's how I think it. How about in your, what do you think, Ms. Lopez? What do you think about the designation of origin? Is it a key factor in France compared to the rest of the world? What do you think about that? We're not against that way of producing milk. I mean, there are people that do not produce Cantal, they produce other cheese varieties, they produce other food like yogurt, you know. We are in Cantal, but we're not forced to produce Cantal cheese as a designation of origin, you know. The most important thing is just to respect what we do regarding what people want to consume or eat. That's the most important fact to consider. Since the year 1900, over 100 years, we've been producing it that way because we had other dairies in France. It's not that we're comparing them, saying that one is better than the other. We have thousands of cheese varieties, and it's a pleasure to try one or the other. And in our case, we are not, you know, our marketing does not consist of saying that our cheeses are better than other European cheese. What we rather do is just to grant that the quality is the one that we want to sell. And then we also have to be open-minded and try other cheeses of the world because they are also good. When we're talking about volcanic cheeses, it might be interesting that in the labeling of those cheeses that are produced in volcanic areas, we might make a specific, you know, I don't know, some sort of quality branding, not a designation of origin, but just to include in the label volcanic cheese. What do you think about that? Well, personally, I think that we need to distinguish the region where you produce the cheese. I mean, there's some dairies that might be in volcanic regions, but, you know, the livestock is not produced with grazing, and maybe they're not getting all the nutrients from those soils. So by the end of the day, they getting those nutrients from some other sources, indirect sources. So it might be interesting that those that you know, have the grazing and that where the livestock really graze this freely, like the ones with designation of origin in Cantal, right? That they also consider that fact too. Well, it might be something that might be fostered by the European Union, you know, maybe creating a seal that to differentiate. What do you, Mr. Lopez, what do you think about that? I don't think it is that necessary. We're talking about a combination of products that share some indications linked to that volcanic origin. It also has a lot to do with the way you prepare the cheese or produce it. This cheese can be eaten every time of the day. It depends on how the chefs prepare it. It is linked to the cuisine and to the gastronomy. If we're talking about this cheese as a secondary element, we need to work all together. In this place, we're talking with the Verneux Valley, which is we have visits from other territories and volcanic territories just before the pandemic started, and it's important to exchange opinions on site, and that's the only way to advance and to keep on producing our products the way we do it. I think that is really something that might help us to grow rather than creating a label like happens with the Colombian coffee. that would be a little bit complicated. So I don't think that to have a label or a seal might turn these products to be more global. I don't know whether in the Philippines or in the United States. So we have the same identity like might happen with Cantal, Lanzarote cheeses or from other regions, because we're talking about volcanic regions. And I think that's the key factor. Yeah, I agree up to a certain point, and the traceability is something that is almost sacred. I mean, one thing is that the dairy is in a volcanic region, and another thing is that the livestock have grazed in a volcanic region. I think that you have to differentiate both things, so distinguish them. I think there might be a label that might be very attractive, even to sell, to buy for tourism, and that might help to give an added value to the end product and to help farmers to earn a little bit more money. And I also agree up to a certain point. For instance, in Garrocha, we have a group that is Quinta Volcanic, that I presume that Fina has mentioned and Martina have mentioned before. And they try to support all what has been previously mentioned, namely what has to do with the territory, because indeed there are some products that are better produced in a volcanic region than in a non-volcanic region, because the soils filter the water much better, because water, we don't have the problems with the roots. So there's certain crops that perfectly work in volcanic soils. And maybe we might not have that label, but we might have a big umbrella under which we have many products. The Quina Volcanic, which is volcanic kitchen, and that will contribute to really help those products to be better markets, which are under this umbrella, and people understand that come from the same region. Well, I think that we've done a good summary and really got to know the products from the different regions. Salvador, I hope that you recover soon, get well soon. Merci, Mr. Baird, and thank you, Arminda, for being here.
A ver. El agua, cuidado. A ver. Vale. Ya. Sí. Vale. Esto un poquito más aquí, ya está. Venga. Sí. Joao, tú estás preparado, ¿no?
Are you ready to go?
Sí, ¿no? Vámonos, ¿no? Bien. Bueno, pues realmente interesante.
Okay, well, that was fascinating, the presentation about the different key cheeses. And it got me thinking about perhaps we should create this label for volcanic cheeses coming from places like Lanzarote or the Canary Islands, so that people know what they're eating. Well, continue. Now we have an event entitled A Fusion of Cuisine, Volcanic Cuisine from Lanzarote. We're going to be joined by 3 leading chefs from the island. João Farago is head chef at the Coentro restaurant located in Puerto Calero. In 2018, he won the award for Best Chef from the Canary Islands. He's one of the most creative chefs we have. And he's very well known in his field. He's very well known by people involved in the world of gastronomy. So João Farago, welcome. A round of applause, please. Because he really deserves it. Well, I leave the stage in your hands. And we're looking forward to seeing what you're going to cook up for us. Well, first of all, once again, thank you very much to the organizers, Vocento and the Lanzarote Island Council. Thank you for such a warm welcome, and thank you for sharing all of your experiences as well. Today, I have a few of the different offerings from my tasting menu. As you probably know, we focus on offering up local products, but a fusion of different ingredients. I'm from Brazil originally. I've lived here for 11 years, and I really feel like it's my hometown now. But I try to use local materials, local ingredients, but with Latin American, particularly Brazilian cooking techniques, and also traditional Spanish cooking, which is really my true passion and where I received most of my training. First of all, then, I think you tried it in the opening dinner. It was a barbecued leek with sea anemones. It's called ortiguilla. It's a very commonly served dish. It accompanies a beer, particularly in the island of La Graciosa, but it's not something... sea urchins. Sea anemone, sorry, sea anemone. Now, it's much more common in France, and less so here, actually, unusually. Actually, the problem is right now we're not allowed to go out and harvest it to pick it. I've made a ajo blanco. It's a almond soup, a cold almond cream with a little raw garlic and also roasted garlic as well. So this almond soup then, in my version, rather than being served with olive oil, I include avocado, so a vegetable oil. So we're linking this dish, this ajo blanco, this almond dish, with avocados in this case, which has quite a fresh taste in the mouth. So I put, first of all, a base of this almond cream. And this is leek ash. So we roast it until it reduces down to ash. We've chosen leek because it's actually quite a sweet vegetable. And despite the ashy taste, it doesn't feel like you're eating something bitter. It has this sweet element. I particularly like the leeks because of this the delicacy, the delicate feel in the mouth. So I'm sprinkling on this this ash here, and I've also added a slice of roasted leek, much like the calçots in Catalonia. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. We roast it, we peel it, and then we put it in a vacuum packed container before we boil it. In my menu, I also coat it in gofio and fry it. So this is the cream of avocado. Now I'm squeezing onto either side. This is our pepper from La Palma. We roast it and then we crush it to chili powder. Sorry, this is chili powder from La Palma. So these are eggs from a particular fish here on the island. We salt it for 36 days in a vacuum-packed container in the fridge. We take it out, we dry it for a couple of days above a stove. In our case, we have a machine to dry them. And then I smoke it over my barbecue. This is from the albacore. So I'm going to grate it now on top. You can use any type of egg, fish egg. I prefer these smaller ones because if they're too big, it can take too long to dry them out and they can end up going off. So this is eel now. We also toast it or grill it on the barbecue. And it's soaked in red wine vinegar. Here we have some fresh avocado.
El ajo blanco Malaga.
The Malaga version of this almond soup is usually served with a piece of fruit, often grapes, but in this occasion we're going to use the dragon fruit. I usually use the purple dragon fruit because it has a lot more flavor than the white one. The white one has a great texture, but it's a little bit tasteless. So this is a good complement. We add a little bit of olive oil with a little bit of coriander. And here we have it. This is our finished product with a little bit of coriander. This is my absolute favorite ingredient. My restaurant is actually called coentro, which is coriander in Portuguese. And this is the second part of our tasting menu. With which we serve after a hot dish to have this contrast in different temperatures. Thank you.
Bueno, entonces ese sería el segundo pase del menú degustación.
So let's move on to the second part of this tasting menu now. I want to highlight the bowls that we use, the ceramics. We actually buy them from a local artisan. She creates all of our orders made to measure. She's very inspired by the local environment. I tend to focus more on the flavor of the dishes themselves rather than the look of the crockery. So, in this plate, in this dish, I tried to combine Spanish cuisine, local products from Lanzarote, and also keeping in mind my roots in Brazil. It's a little bit cold, actually. Let's see if we can heat it up a little bit. No problem. Not to worry. Okay, this is easy, really. Beans, white beans. But when we have these bigger ones, they're actually better because they're more buttery and they have a better texture. So we start with smoked cheese with goat's milk. We heat it up together so that the cheese dissolves and we have this cream. So white beans cooked with laurel leaves, salt and garlic. The day before, I create I make a mix of 50, 60 liters of water with some vinegar to ensure that the skin doesn't swell up too much. The beans here actually have a very thick skin, and so the vinegar actually softens that skin. And so we leave it to soak overnight. I've tried using a pressure cooker, but really the best way is the Asturian traditional method, which involves a very slow heating. And when you see the bubbles start to rise, you bring the temperature down and let it simmer. This is how they do it there, at which point they add other ingredients. But in our case, we're just going to use laurel, salt, and garlic. So we have our smoked cheese sauce, and here we have the main part of the dish. This dish allows me to use different products from the sea. I like smoked sardines. I like mackerel as well, slow roasted mackerel. In this case, we're going to use octopus. This is another one of the ingredients that most fascinates me. I never cook them in water, however. I cook them in a saucepan with some oil and very little liquid, because this is a way of maintaining all the taste and the color as well. So after that, I put them on the barbecue, and then I coat it with mojo rojo, so this red Canarian sauce, red paprika sauce. So it's quite simple, but it's quite a heavy dish, suitable for this time of the year in winter time. So we put a layer of these white beans with this smoked cheese sauce. I tend not to serve up very small dishes. I want the customer to at least have 3 spoonfuls of food. I find it really sad when customers are always left wanting more. So what I'd rather do is take one of the dishes off the menu, but make all of the other dishes a little bit greater in volume. So now we put the octopus, which has been stored in a vacuum-packed plastic and kept refrigerated. If it's still not dry enough, then we can put it in the oven just to dry it out, that last bit. So once we've finished serving up the octopus, we take the same cheese sauce with this goat's cheese, and we turn it into a mousse. And this is the final layer of the dish. So you can see that what's underneath this is a mystery for the diner. I'll finish it off with a little bit of ash, which of course always combines very well with all of our flavors, everything done on the barbecue, the smoked cheese. So we're underlining this this essence of the dish. We're going to finish off with a little bit of spring onion, just to give it a splash of green. Sorry, this is chives, not spring onion. And a little slice of toast of cornbread with pumpkin seeds, so that we can dip it in and have this contrast with the crunchy and the smooth. So these are my two dishes for today. Now, as always, for me, there are two key products. So on the one hand, we have the smoked cheese and the octopus. Of course, the beans give texture, but they're really just an addition to these other main ingredients. And on the other hand, we have this fresher dish with a little bit of acidity. For me, this fire, this barbecue element are always the most important. So thank you very much.
Bueno, pues
Okay, let's go on and continue with the second chef invited for today. In this case is Jonay Perdomo, chef of Risco Restaurant, which is located in Famara. He is going to prepare a fish, a horse mackerel, that restaurant is giving big importance on local products which are nearby produced. So the year 2021 has been a year he was awarded with Repsol Sun and a Big Gourmand. So please, Jonay Perdomo, the stage is yours. Good morning, Jonay. Big applause. The sound, please. I cannot, the interpreter now. Okay, I will prepare something traditional, like my case is. I have some lanzarote chive, onions, some herbs, pumpkin, some banana in this case, garlic. And we have made an onion confit together with garlic until the oil tells us if the flavor is suitable. It's a little bit strong garlic flavor. We don't want it to take too much color, so we really like to mix the olive oil with the Malmsey wine produced in Lanzarote. This is a vinegar out of Malmsey wine, and they have produced it for us a little bit with a stronger flavor and aroma. But we need to, you know, now you get those acidic nuances once you really tried it in mouth, you know. And now we have here the horse mackerel. What we did is that we marinated it for 1.5 hours in the salt from Danubio, just to remove all impurities and to preserve also the loin, so that it doesn't really get apart once you cook it. You can talk. Can you please talk about the origins of this dish? What did inspire you? Well, my inspiration is rather my father, who is the one that has trained me and inspired me to get involved into this cuisine. Well, it's also homage to my grandmother. I remember that my grandmother used to pickle the cabbage and the pumpkin, and we have flambéed this with a little bit of butter, a little bit of anise, some clove, and we just finished adding a little bit of sweet wine from Lanzarote to have those sweet nuances to combine and have that contrast. And we prepared a banana cream from Lanzarote. I don't know whether you had the chance to smell and try a banana produce. It is very intense in aroma, but the flavor does not contain that much sugar as we might think, but this is a homage to our friends from La Palma. I don't know whether you had to try a traditional dish which is called colines from La Palma, which is prepared with banana, with gofio, with a little bit of vinegar, and we really want to pay a tribute to our friends from La Palma who are having a really hard time. Where's the saucepan? So we're just gonna mark the fish slightly, just flip it over somehow, and then we will prepare traditional pickle. It is emulsion, you know, we have a cream, the pickled cream that we will heat up slightly. Fernando, do you want to ask, would you like to ask any question about what I'm preparing? Well, I think it is very interesting that people get to know and some information about, how do we say it? How do you prepare fish? Because as far as I know, you normally clean the fish next to the ocean, right? Yeah, we have one of the biggest European marine reserve next to our town. So we try to treat the basic ingredients with love. We love to prepare that pickles. We like to cure the fish. We try to use the seasoned fruit combined with different aromas. And we love to keep the traditions, respecting that line. That means not to forget about where our roots are. And as far as I know, just to put in value all those traditional dishes, like the soups, right? The stews, especially in this time of the year. Yeah, you're right. As I mentioned before, depending on the time of the year and what we fish, we treat it in one way or the other. In this specific case, as we have cured it in salt, I don't know whether you can see the center. I mean, we just leave it a little bit raw so where we keep the texture and with all the flavor concentrated, right? Which is slightly saturated. This is, as I mentioned before, this is a horse mackerel. This is a horse mackerel with a pickle sauce. Yeah. Now we're going to talk about the pumpkin. We will cut it first in order to make it easier to eat it and enjoy it.
Nuestra cremita de plátano.
Now we use a little bit of banana cream. With a pickle sauce, but in a creamy texture. And to finish, we will add a little bit of fresh onions that will contribute to have some color, aroma, flavor when we try it. And Fernando, this is the dish that I wanted to prepare today. Big applause for Honai. And with a fish that normally, what I say, people normally try to find more noble fishes, if we can call it like that, you know. And, you know, our horse mackerel is simply a fish, if we can consider it as that. But it's really tasty, you know, and this is the season where you can catch it in Lanzarote. And this is quite a big piece. You can see it by the loin. We love big fishes, you know, because they have a very specific flavor with the mixed fats. And then we marinate it with salt and sometimes with very aromatic vinegar that we also prepare with different herbs and spices. And thanks God, we have a great assortment of, you know, different fish types here on the island that we can catch. Thank you so much. And now, to close this show cooking that we have prepared for today, Gonzalo Calzadilla will come here on stage. He's the executive manager of Princesa of the restaurant Isla de Lobos in Playa Blanca, Lanzarote. He has kind of a revolutionary proposal. He will prepare 8 different dishes in petit four, which are quite famous. I mean, normally the chefs round up or wrap up, you know, the preparations, and he's going to prepare 8 petit four at his restaurant Isla de Lobos at Playa Blanca, and the petit four will be the ones that he's going to offer in the menus that he includes in his own restaurant. Why plays the onion a key role? Because it had kind of a sweetness, and onion can be worked in different manners. And I think the best person to explain it is himself. Thank you so much, Gonzalo. Welcome here on stage. Well, when Juan proposed us to give this speech, we thought about a product that was grown in Lanzarote, a volcanic product that we could grow and produce on site, and the best proposal would be just onion. So we're just thinking about how to make a good proposal with the onions. I say, guys, how about that sweetness that onions have? How about if we produce a sweet dish? How about if we prepare a dessert? And, you know, kind of the way I talk is, how about if we prepare? So let's try to work it the best way we can and to round up and finish a good meal with a very surprising product. And what would be better than an onion that people link to stews, you know, to sautés, meals. And that's the reason why we started to think about how to prepare this meal. We're going to show a short video about our restaurant, then we'll get started.
Vale.
Okay. So once we start working on the speech, as I explained before, we want to offer some sweet flavors, and we came to this stage why the sweetness that onion contain. Antonio explained today early in the morning how he planted the onions and what the volcanic ashes do, which is to retain the humidity at night. And that helps, you know, that dew that you get in the early morning hours. And so you have to keep that moisture so that the onion can keep on growing. Another characteristic of onions produced in Lanzarote is thanks to the wind, the trade wind, and that saltiness that contains the wind. The onions have been step by step adapting to the environment and is contributing that the that proteins really absorb that sweetness and those sugars. So we don't have a high production and we don't have a very big onions because that's sugars that make onions not to grow that big and to get such a big production. On the other hand, you achieve a really good flavor, and that's what we're looking for, right? Great flavor. So working with this great two varieties that we have here. On the one hand, we have the white onions because it has adapted much better to this environment. And the red onion, most of them come from Tenerife, which is also a volcanic island. So we because we rather like the red onion because of the sweetness, but we can play with both varieties as far as both are sweet enough for what we want to achieve. So before we started, so what we did, we just roasted some onions. We prepared, look at how much liquid contains an onion. It's just one onion that was roasted. We added a little bit of color, and that's the natural liquid that an onion contains. If you squish that, you start getting more and more liquid. And that's the way we started to work, revolving around that idea of preparing a dessert with onion. And with keep squeezing it, we obtain that liquid. And if we keep on squeezing it, we will get more and more liquid. Is kind of a broth, if we can call it like that. That's the liquid of the red onion, which is completely concentrated. We didn't burn it. We just roasted it because otherwise we wouldn't be able to eat it because it will be a little bit too strong in mouth, right? So with this restas that we have, the onion rest that we have here, kind of a paste, right? We have cooked it for all night at 69 degrees. So it's a slow cooking so that it really releases all those sweet flavors. And that paste that we have here, that onion paste that we have, we later on dehydrated in the oven another night. We have dehydrated it at 68 degrees along all night. And we have achieved two different powder. On the one hand, we have a powder which has a bigger grain, and a very thinner powder. If you compare both powders, is what you have. I mean, it's the same product, but one is milled. It's kind of. We have chosen two different textures just to work with. And we have these three ingredients to start to work with to produce that petit food. The first thing we thought is just to prepare, we normally, just jelly beans, that's what we wanted to make. And we substituted that fruit paste through this onion juice to produce those jelly beans. We work on them. And now we have a block, right? And we have those jelly mini cups. We have sliced them. And we have kind of a jelly mini cup, which is completely sweet, which is prepared with that onion liquid. The only thing that to finish it, when we, at our restaurant, we're going to cover it with a little bit of powdered sugar. As you see, it is really, really sticky. So now we have this, it's a mixture between sugar and citric acid to give that punch. And regarding the presentation, we are going to use this wooden box. And here we have that mini jelly, mini cup covered with the sugar and the citric acid in order to give more power to those flavors. And that's our first petit feu. Perfect.
Y ahora dijimos, ¿y por qué no podemos hacer también una nube? Pues,
how about if we prepare a marshmallow? Well, that's what we did. We took the onion liquid, added a little bit of egg white and sugar, and that's what we achieved. Kind of a marshmallow, right? Then we're gonna cut. Let's use the knife. And we cut it into mini cubes. We have those tiny little marshmallows. In this case, we are going to use the onion liquid, a lot of sugar, otherwise the egg white do not get fit, you know, that had the texture. And we're going to foster and kind of increase the taste of that onion with that fine powder. So we're going to cover it with that fine powder that we mentioned before. And here we have our second onion marshmallow. And that's the way to contrast the different colors that we might achieve with the basic product. And then we kept on thinking and making kind of a brainstorm and say, I have a couple of colleagues that come from the south, and I say, how about if we prepare, you know, that traditional polvorón, which is a type of heavy, soft, and very crumbly Spanish shortbread that we produce for Christmas, right? And we use that dark powder that we produced before and substitute it and cook it in the oven at 160 degrees for about 10 minutes. Because what we want to achieve is that we don't want it to roast it too much. You know, when you have that polvorón, the key factor is the flour, and as long as we cannot cook the flour because we're using the onion, we just toasted it slightly. So what we did, now we have, we toasted the polvorón 160 degrees. Do we have the dough so that you can see the dough we work with? As you might see, this is a kind of the dough, the very dark dough that we had to cut with a pastry cutter. There you go. And what we did is just to cook it. We cook it really, really slight so that the shortening that we added to it really gets melted and gets mixed with the onion powder. And then we have it, we cook it. And here we go. And now we're going to glaze it with this onion stock. We have reduced it until we get a kind of a cream. We heat it up slightly. And let's glaze it a little bit to get that shiny look, enhancing that onion taste and that onion flavor. And here we have some glazed sugar that mix with the glaze. We have also prepared some isomal sugar crystals with that, trying to resemble that olivine that we have in the volcanoes. Cute green crystals. And that sugar gives that sweetness that we might be missing with the onion. And we're going to adapt, you know, introduce it into the box as a third petit feu that we're going to offer. And the most traditional thing in confectionery is, you know, it's kind of a cake, a sponge cake. It doesn't have gluten, doesn't contain gluten, so it's kind of a heavy cake that it's not a sponge cake then, right? So we prepared it with butter, and we have replaced the flour by our onion flour. And this is the cake that we prepared, which is an onion cake, which is has this stony. It resembles kind of a stone. And with that, what we did was, this is kind of a heavy cake, you know. It doesn't taste as good as we wanted. So we prepared a liqueur. We prepared a spirit with the onions, with raw onions, and we left it stay for about a month because we didn't have it more time since Juan called us to prepare the speech, and we prepare a spirit. And with that spirit, what we did is just to soak the cake into that spirit. So, you know, that moisture that we were missing in that cake is added through that spirit or schnapps that we prepared with the onions. And if you open it and break it down, you can see that it's completely moist, and we have that humidity, that moisture that we were looking for. Right? So we soak it in that schnapps of spirit. And on the other hand, we're going to play with chocolate, because everybody was thinking, oh, we miss chocolate. We were, you know, because we're so kind of obsessed with the onion, and they say, well, no. Let's prepare chocolate, and we prepare chocolate for vegans, where we just use xanthan and water and chocolate. We just bring it to 40%. We join it and jellify it. So we prepare a chocolate aganache that everybody can take it, even for allergic people. So how about if we remove the water and add some onion liquid, then we get a little bit more flavor, and that's what we did. We prepared the ganache, added a little bit of coffee to play with the flavors. So now we have the presentation. We have that ganache, that cream, and we finish our presentation with a chocolate coin to play with the texture and the colors and the flavors. So that's our fourth petit food. Regarding the fifth one, obviously, as we have that onion schnapps, let's offer people a little bit of onion schnapps. Do you see the color? Because we've added that onion liquid, and then we have covered the glass with a little bit of onion powder to decorate the glass. And that's our fifth petit food that we have achieved based on that onion product. And then we also have the Canary Islands origins. I was not born here, but I think that I've adapted to the island on all what the island can offer now is December, Christmas. How about if we can prepare that typical Christmas pastry that we prepare for Christmas time? So how can we do? Well, another star product is the lentils, you know. So we prepare lentil flour. We prepare traditional dough with the lentils, and we needed to add to that fried pastry that we prepared that onion taste. So we prepare. So instead of preparing a product that is called pumpkin threads that we really confit, we prepare that confit, you know, that onion thread that we prepare for dessert in order to fill that pastry. Right, and substituted it. There's traditional pumpkin strands in syrup through the onion stripes in syrup. And we use the lentils to create the flour So normally those truchas have about 2 different flavors. So what we did was, just prepare a very sweet lentil cream. We just took white lentils mixed with a little bit of syrup in order to combine the flavors. And now we just close our trucha. I've been here for about 5 years, but there's some terms which are traditional that locals use, like guagua for bus, the papa for potato, and trucha for the pastry. And here we have our traditional trucha, and we have replaced the pumpkin strands through onion strands and syrup. And that's our 6th petit four. And then we thought we're trying to find a dessert, an onion dessert, and we wanted to prepare a big dessert. Then we ended up with a petit four, but then we prepared a onion ice cream. And working with that onion liquid, we prepare an onion ice cream, and we capsuled it in a mold. We covered it with shortening flour, a little bit of onion powder to have a volcanic cube. Oh, it broke down. Too bad. So we use kind of a capsule. It's a bit hot, so the texture doesn't keep. It was is an onion ice cream with a film of shortening. Jose went to the fridge to get another cube just to present it, and then we cover it with an onion cream. We just took some cream and added the granulated onion powder, and as far as it was completely dehydrated, what happened with the cream was just to add a little bit of flavor and texture. So here we have an onion cream, and that's the way we would end up our onion ice cream covered with us onion cream on top of it. Let's see if we have the chance to replace this one by the other one. It has to do with the heat. The ice cream didn't. It's a little bit too much heat for the ice cream, right? We're going to cover it with the shortening, and we will just replace one for the other. And just to then end up with the last petit four that we want to propose is the following. We're just going to take the spring cloves, those fresh cloves that we use just to, that Toño Morales showed this morning. We cover them in chalk, leave them in about 30 minutes, bake them, leave them the whole night stay, and then cook it in syrup. So this is the way they look like. This is a very sweet young garlic. It keeps the texture, and inside this kind of a creamy stuff, so you have the texture of the garlic, the young garlic, similar to the chive, And then we dry it up a little bit with the help of a napkin, paper napkin. And we cover it with our onion powder, leaving the green part uncovered. Right? Here we have the green part uncovered, and we will introduce it into our wooden box because we want people to think that it is planted in there, so they need to discover what that box contains. And it seems as if the spring onion is kind of growing from the box. It's kind of a game. So when the guests and the diners see, they will just pull the green part out, and we'll get out this spring garlic covered with that onion powder. Okay? And that was it. That's our presentation. That's what we tried to do. We wanted to get a kind of a traditional product from Lanzarote, like the onion is. Try to include it into the dessert menu to do something fun, because when you cook, you have to try to have fun. I want to thank the organization, my team, for being here and supporting me, for trying all the tries done and preparing the restaurant. Thank you, Saborea Lanzarote, GSR, for counting with us for this presentation. A pleasure, and thank you.
Que realmente lo merece.
Wow, that really did deserve a round of applause. We've got just 5 minutes left before we end the session for today, so please remain in your seats. Thank you to these 3 chefs. They've really given a fantastic demonstration of Lanzarote cuisine, each in their own style. And everything has a beginning and unfortunately an end. We've had 3 full days. We've had lots of different demonstrations, presentations, everything taking place in spaces of huge natural value and unique spots that are offered by this island. So, Benjamin, please, representative from the Lanzarote Island Council, please take your seat on the stage, and the executive director of Vocento, who will be taking us through the last presentation of the event, Benjamin Lana. So good afternoon. Let's stand a little bit apart so that we can take our masks off now. Honestly, throughout these 3 days, I've learnt a great deal. I've witnessed the art of cooking from all of these chefs, and I wanted to share with you some of my reflections. First of all, obviously, we must have another event like this again in the future. We've just seen all of these different ways of putting a spring onion and an onion to use, and I would love to be able to have more opportunities to discover other things like this in a future edition. I think we need to involve actually much more people in this event. This is the very first edition of the conference, but we must continue to grow, inviting more people from Lanzarote, because it's a village. There are all different layers of the hospitality sector in Lanzarote, and I think we need to bring all of these different actors in to raise our game. This is really something very distinctive, very unique. Lanzarote has always been a reference point for this volcanic cooking, this unique style. And as we said in the Jameos del Agua, this is the perfect occasion to showcase all of these unique techniques. Congratulations to all of the companies that have taken part, the different participants from all different backgrounds. We've very much enjoyed it. I would like to give my sincere thanks for the organization. It's been a huge success, I think. I think it's going to lead us on to greater things, and it's been a real kick up the bum in a way. We must continue. So please, let's give a big round of applause for this great success.
Bueno. Sí.
Okay. Okay. Well, what's left to say? I'm standing next to another Benjamin. Usually when we see each other in a meeting, we always turn around. We're usually actually the only Benjamin in the room, so it's very strange to be standing next to another Benjamin, and he's a nice guy as well. Well, I have very little to add, really. Until not long ago, as I think I said, that this came up with this started as a very strange idea, then it became a project, and now it's become a challenge for the future. We haven't even finished Volcanic, and we're already thinking about the next edition. And when that happens, it means it's been a success. We're very open to new ways to grow and new things to include. And we're very happy with how everything's panned out. We've very much enjoyed this symbiosis of participants from all different backgrounds. We've very much enjoyed the landscape that we've been surrounded by, which has been our common point of reference as well. I think we can all agree that we have a clear path ahead of us to continue working on this volcanic cuisine and volcanic culture. On behalf of everybody, not only the organization, but the participants, I would like to thank all of our host locations, all of the population, actually, the restaurant workers, the places that we visited. We've been welcomed very warmly everywhere we've been. I've very much enjoyed the way we've moved around the island and haven't just been sat in one conference centre. So let's see what other places we can include for next year. I think that there is actually room for other sectors to be involved within this world of volcanic things to do with volcanoes. I think that, of course, the cooking element of this is what brings everyone together, but we can also bring in eno-tourism, agro-industry, etc. So the last thing I have to say is, I suppose, thank you to the Lanzarote Island Council, to everyone on the island of Lanzarote. Thank you also, of course, to Vocento and the team at Vocento who've been working very hard to turn this idea into a reality for the past year and a half. Thank you to everyone, but in particular Juan, who has been the driver of this event, always in the background, pushing us forward. Of course, this was a team effort. I think I've mentioned other team members, but perhaps not Jordi Barra, who is the head chef. He's in charge of the kitchen. We haven't seen him on stage, but he's always been in the background managing all the different teams. And all of the meals that we've enjoyed have worked like clockwork, thanks to this man. Thanks, Irene, and your team. I can see back here Dani as well, and more people. I can see Felix over there. Rosé is injured right now, but he's not here, but thank you as well. So we're going to move on now to the very last part. We're going to enjoy some traditional cooking. This includes the most creative cooking, visions for the future, and traditional cooking. We have a more relaxed format now. It's going to be a buffet. I would like to call to the stage, before they start working, a few people. Toño Morales, of course, who is hosting us very kindly today. You all met him this morning, where he showed you around his eco estate. So Toño, Luis, Leone, Ernesto Palomar from Trattoria Il Nono in Arrecife, Juan Carlos Monzón from the Santiago Bodega in Yaiza, Juan el Majorero de Brisa from Brisa Maria restaurant in Playa Blanca, Cristóbal Santana from Casa Brígida restaurant in Playa Blanca, Tonio Morales from the Vecina Club La Santa, a restaurant in La Santa, María Díaz de Cascada from the restaurant in Puerto del Carmen, La Cascada, Jonay Perdomo from the Risco restaurant in Famara in Teguise, and Fefo Nieves from Mermelada, the restaurant. I've seen you back there somewhere as well. So to all of you, thank you. We are very much looking forward to enjoying this last event. I've heard some people back there who are very much looking forward to drinking quite a lot of wine this afternoon now that we've finished working. I would love to give you all the chance to say a few words, but I think it will take a bit too much time. So if anyone would like to say a few words, then please step forward. Feel free. Those cooks that have been involved. Well, thank you. Just one thing. The photos that are hanging on the walls are part of a project from the Tinaje municipality in collaboration with the university. And they attempt to highlight this transformation of the territory that we've been referring to so much throughout the conference. So as you leave, please have a look on the left. There is an exhibition. These photos are linked to it. The goal is to give you an idea about the different foods that are grown here in the estate. And there is also, there are some samples of our main supplier of fish, and my friend Frances is there. So on your way out, please take a moment to just have a look around. Just a minute and a half is enough, so please enjoy it. Thank you.
Gracias, Toño.
Thank you, Toño.
Pues, María.
Maria, it's your turn. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to meet you. As you can see, I think we represent the island very well, and today we're going to offer you a series of traditional dishes, things that we've always eaten since a young age and still eating as adults and have continued developing over time. And I think everyone here today has something individual to offer for you. I hope you enjoy it. Anyone else? Come on. I always have to speak, and I'm the worst at doing it. But anyway, thank you so much. Thank you to the organizers. Thank you for the huge effort that's, been taken to make sure that Lanzarote is represented in its entirety here. We're going to, of course, continue working on this project. Let's hope that next year is bigger and better. Thank you.
Pues nos comprometemos para el año que viene.
Yes, we are committed to celebrating the second edition of Volcanic next year. Thank you so much, everybody. Let's go and have a look at this exhibition now. But before that, please, let's have a photo, a group photo, just very quickly. Perhaps the other chefs are still here to join the photo.